So we've covered a lot of ground. Now the main thing that I want to leave you with is metrics, key performance indicators that you can actually watch and track. Some are objective, some are subjective, but throughout the years, I found that downloads are very meaningless until you get to a place where you're making, thousands of downloads a month. It sucks to keep refreshing your feed and focusing on the fact that you got 5 downloads, because everybody is like that at first, right? When you're starting from scratch. So it can be demotivating to focus on the wrong metrics. So my goal is to help save you from that by focusing on stuff that's actually going to move the needle forward. Okay, so the first metric that you're going to want to think about is hitting 100 episodes, right? So this is very much in your control. The more you record, the more you publish, the more you stay consistent with that. Again, once a week is going to take you 2 years. If you do twice a week, you can easily hit that in 1 year, and so forth. So getting to 100 episodes is a big deal because it shows you've covered a lot of ground in your given chosen topics and areas. So that's going to be metric number 1. That's purely in your control. Number 2 is this metric called the 100 download rule. The 100 download rule is really this idea that on each one of those 100 episodes, you have 100 downloads. And at first, the goal is just in its lifetime of the episode, try to get it all up to 100 plus downloads. Over time, that goal will shift where it's like, try to get 100 downloads within 30 days. Then try to get 100 downloads within 7 days of its release. For example, after 7 days, you can rely that, okay, every episode is typically hitting around 100 or more. That is a good sign. That's showing you that, okay, you've got this consistent 100 people that keep coming back and are interested in this, thing you have to say. It's a very good metric for you to keep in mind and to titrate it back the way I said, which is 1 is just in the lifetime of its episode, get to 100, and then make it more challenging for yourself by making it 30 days and 7 days. The third metric that I recommend tracking, which is one of the more important ones, is clicks. The reason I categorize this as more important is because this is what other companies and brands and sponsors and guests even are coming onto your show for. They're coming on with the assumption that, hey, the links and stuff that I provide and the stuff that I'm also doing, portion of these people will click over and check out my stuff, whether it's now or a couple months or a year from now, like that will happen. So if you can generate demand for clicks and you can show that over time, you become a very valuable place to be because people actually act on what you're saying. Where most podcasts go wrong is they don't track this part. They have a couple of their main links there, yeah, but if they're talking about a microphone or they're talking about a new course or whatever, like they don't have a special trackable link. They're just telling you about the URL and where to go, right? Which makes it harder to track. Yes, they could have been listening, but then they go to Google and search you, and so now Google gets the credit, right? So the way to making sure that you see the impact of what the podcast is doing is to make sure you've got a trackable link like Bitly or genie.us. That's one I really like. What I basically do to train this early on is, let's say you talk about in your given area like 3 main books that you're reading right now, right? About if you're into hunting and your show's about hunting, okay, the 3 top hunting books that help you or whatever. And if you're in any other industry, same thing. What this did in a fitness podcast that I recorded was I talked about those books. I included the links to those books. And yes, I'm making some affiliate money off of that if people buy, right? But essentially, I got to see that, hey, the total downloads for this episode, new show, wasn't expecting much, right? Was only like 35 or something like that, 35 downloads, right? And then on YouTube version, there was like 50 views. Okay, so it's like 85 total people have seen or heard this at the moment, right? That's your total impressions. Now, when I go look at the clicks in my tracker for those 3 books, I've got 4 clicks on this one, 5 clicks on this one, and 3 clicks on this one. That's data if you know how to interpret it, right? Oh, okay, why did more people click on this book versus this book? That gives you something that your audience might be interested in, right? But number 2, I can say, okay, 6 plus 5 plus 3 is 14. I got 14 clicks out of the 85 people on YouTube and on my podcast that ever saw or heard this thing. If you do the percentage there of what that is, it's pretty high. Like, you don't normally expect more than like 5% of people to take action on your things in the internet world, right? That's why you need so much volume so that it filters down into 5% being, okay, as many clicks as you need. But now if you go, okay, 14 divided by 85, I think that's right. That is a 16.5% click-through rate, okay? So 16.5% of people that actually listened or watched the whole thing took action and clicked off. Now, you know that people could have, like, when I recommend my freebies, they might just type in toddmahal.com and go there versus click in the description. But your job as the host is to train your audience to click the links in the description. The more you do that, the easier it is, because you can always change that stuff out too. If a link gets updated, domain gets updated, that stuff can be updated. You also leave it a little bit more open to, hey, there's other goodies in there that are going to be useful for you, depending on who you are. And so now you've got extra traffic that you're capturing because somebody stumbles upon, oh, this other podcast episode or this YouTube video you made that you happen to include in there, or the sales page that you have. So that is going to be your third metric, is clicks. Master generating clicks. Even if it's not to your own products you're selling, like point to other resources or shows or places that, you know, people are interested in and get them used to clicking through. Because when it comes time to sell something and now you start asking people to click, it's going to take time for them to get adjusted to that. But if you train them from day one, this becomes a very high value add, no matter, you know, what route you decide to go with your monetization goals and, you know, your other strategies. I was running out of sunlight. Thanks for being patient. Had to switch to my artificial light, but I promise we're almost there. The fifth metric that I want you to hold on to is probably one of the more important metrics. This is going to be a little more subjective, but it's being honest with yourself about what you want to see happen from your podcast. So for me, when I first started my podcast, you know, my first one ever, it actually helped me get my dream internship and it helped me get my dream job at a Bay Area startup. At the time, in that season of life, like I was younger, I was trying to make my own thing happen, but also I was willing to learn from people, willing to work for free, and I wanted access to opportunities beyond my area. And so I was able to do that, you know, by episode 15 and by episode like 32. So within a year of actually starting my show, I had gotten the dream internship and was starting the dream job. Actually 15 days before 1 full year would have hit. So that's an example of knowing what I wanted from that and being able to kind of create episodes with experts that, you know, helps me on the back end. For you, if you are in a season where you might want to create a community, you might be like, hey, I just want like-minded people to talk to and to engage with who are kind of just as into comic books as I am. I actually have helped somebody do that who wanted to start a show about comic books. And it's very cool to see a year, 2 years later now that he's still doing it. He's connecting people in his area. He's kind of like, he's leading in a community that he actually feels confident in. And this is from a person that he wasn't very confident in a lot of other areas of his life. And it gave him this creative hobby that allows him to work his warehouse job, allows him to have this side hustle and hobby that, you know, allows him to keep going. He really enjoys the sitting down and editing it and working on it and recording it. So that is a purpose, right? It's like, oh, I want this for creative fulfillment. I want to take risks and, you know, see what I build. Or hey, if you say up front, I want more leads from this, right? I want more people who will be interested in my product or service, then there's a game that you can play, promotion strategy that you can deploy based on that purpose. But until you're honest with yourself and you don't know that or you deny it, you might find yourself chasing empty goals like, hey, I'm gonna try to sell a t-shirt, right? And it's like, okay, that might be cool, but what end purpose or end result does this actually get towards for you? And so if your goal is to turn this into a lead generation machine, which is entirely possible to do so, then you just have to take those steps that align with that goal. If you know on the back end, hey, my goal is one day to get sponsors through this. If you want to get sponsors, we've already talked about that metric that you need to hit, 25,000 downloads to 50,000 downloads per episode. You knowing that, you can now aim for that purpose. Like I know somebody, he owns like 10 businesses, right? And a couple big buildings and stuff. But for him, the podcast serves as a place to have meaningful conversations with people. And he does want it to come back and benefit those 10 businesses, but it's really serving as a home base for what this person does. So yes, they're involved in these 10 other things, but this is the home base where they get to discuss and share and talk about, you know, all the stuff that's going on within those 10 businesses. So podcasting a lot of times for people, let's say it's not even a lead generation machine. Let's say that it's going to be just a content marketing system for you, right? So you want to be able to create content in a place consistently for someone. And you know, that's something you need to do, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube or wherever. Podcast is the place that a lot of people pick because of, you know, only the right people really find you, right? It's not something you're on a banging on a loudspeaker saying, hey, come listen to my show. It's like you're actually only attracting people who are into what you're going to be saying. For people who have this fear of, you know, putting stuff out there, oh, my friends and family and coworkers are going to see it, right? Like Instagram may not be the place for you to create in that way because that's a little bit more out there and upfront, but maybe podcasts are, right? It's only reach, and YouTube, it's only reaching the people who are actually into that thing. It's invisible to everybody else. So that is an example of a purpose, right? Using this as a content marketing system. If that's your approach, then hey, podcast is like my playground for where I discuss ideas. Then I look at the transcript. I see what quotes I can pull for copy for my Instagram post. I see what concepts I can pull for, you know, quotes to throw in my newsletter. I see what concepts I can pull for maybe clips that I can pull from here, right? So using the podcast with a purpose allows you to take your mind off of the vanity metrics. Because if you just pay attention to the vanity metrics, like how many downloads do I have, and, you know, how many likes do I have and followers, are they growing? Yes, that's cool. That might be important to some people, but really what it does is it distracts you from staying focused and connected with creating the stuff that you actually want to create, and choosing focus from the beginning instead of, oh, what am I supposed to do? What is this podcast supposed to do for me? It's like we're beyond that point in podcasting world. In 2023 and beyond, you're using podcasts as a tool, right, to deliver information. Lecturers in Ivy League universities are delivering their own lectures and, you know, things like that through podcasting. That's not a way that we used it before. It's the same way Instagram wasn't used for video. It wasn't used for multiple carousel style text posts, right? But over time, as the market matured, people now use it for that. It's used a million different ways. So I hope this opened up the possibilities for how you can actually use a podcast, how you can use it as a very fulfilling place and rewarding place to create for either your hobby or your business goals. And hopefully this gave you a map from start to finish how to actually get this idea off the ground. I do have another video that is once you've actually implemented a lot of these ideas and tasks and concepts I talked about. In that video, I show you step by step how to actually upload into Buzzsprout and launch onto all of the different platforms like Apple and Spotify. So I will link that up in the description below. That's definitely one you should give a watch after this. But I hope you're able to jump around and definitely act on some of the items that I've outlined here today. If you want a checklist type format, the podcast launch checklist I was referring to, make sure to download that in the description below as well, or head over to podmahal.com. I have a bunch of free tools for anybody who's starting a podcast or growing one there as well. And of course, if you need any help at all, you get stuck in certain parts, definitely hit me up. I would love to hear from you. But my intention with this was to try to make it accessible for more people to start a podcast without having to pay for consultations and my time and me having to kind of coach them through it. So hopefully you've listened to this, you can absorb some of it, you can act on it. If it helped you even 1%, I would love to hear from you. Make sure to drop a comment. It really makes it worth it for me to put out and create stuff like this, and I'll continue to do so. Thanks again for hanging out and spending the time. I know this was in-depth video, but I appreciate you, and I will talk to you next time.